Often when people, "How did you come to Islam?" I take a deep breath and try to tell them the short version. I don't think Islam is something that comes suddenly, even that it looks that way at the time, but it was something I went to gradually guided through different experiences. By writing this article, one hopes someone can read it, identify with some things and be motivated to learn more about true Islam. I was born in Australia in 1978 and was baptized and educated as a Christian. As a child, I used to be anxious to go to church and Sunday school. Though I can still remember being anxious to go to church, I can't remember much about it. Perhaps whether it was because I wore my best clothes, saw other children, maybe because of the stories, or maybe she was just looking forward to the famous Sunday lunch of my grandmother when she returned home. My family wasn't strict about religion. As far as I know, the Bible was never read outside the church and we never said it prayers before eating. To put it simply, I think religion was not an important subject in our lives. I can remember going to church with my family a few times, and as I've gotten older I can remember of being bothered when other members of my family chose not to go. So for the past 2 years I have attended church alone. When I was in school, primary, religious education was a weekly lesson. We learned the true Christian values and received copies of the Bible. Although not admitted at the time, I was also looking forward to these classes. It was something interesting to learn, something I believed had some kind of importance, I just didn't know which one. In my high school years I attended a girls' school. We didn't have any kind of classes religious there, and I think that in a way I missed that, because I started to read the Bible on my own. At the time I was reading it only for the sake of interest. Believed that God existed, but did not form in which he was often described in the church. As for the Trinity, I hoped that perhaps it would be something that I would come to understand when I got older. There were many things that made me confused. Thus, there seemed to be religious moments in my life in which I read the Bible and did my best to follow it, so I would get confused and think that was a lot to understand. I remember talking to a girl in my math classes. I think that gave me a reason to look forward to math class. I asked her about things she didn't I understood, and although some explanations I could understand, others I did not seem logical enough for me to trust Christianity 100%. I can't say I was comfortable with many aspects of Australian culture. I did not understand the consumption of alcohol, for example, or having multiple boyfriends. I always felt that there was a lot of pressure and sometimes cried at the thought of becoming an adult, because of what becoming an adult meant in this culture. My family traveled to the abroad often and always thought I would be able to find a country where I could lead a comfortable life and not feel pressured like I do. After spending 3 weeks in Japan on a student exchange, I decided that I wanted to go again for a long-term exchange. In my last year of high school I was accepted to attend a school in Japan in the following year. Before you leave Australia to pass the year abroad, I was going through one of my religious internships. I tried to hide these stages from my parents. For some reason I thought that they would laugh at me reading the Bible. The night before I traveled to Japan my suitcase was ready. However, I stayed awake until my parents fell asleep, so that I could take the Bible and take it too. Didn't want my parents knew that he was taking her. My year in Japan was not the experience of my life. I found problem after problem. At the time it was difficult. I was 17 years old when I went there, and I think I learned a lot valuable lessons that year. One of them was that things are not always what they seem. At one stage one felt as if I had lost everything. My colleagues from Japanese school, friends have always been important to me. Even in the Australia, my Japanese families, and then I got a call saying that would be sent to Australia a few months earlier. He had lost everything, including the dream he had cherished for many years. The night I received that phone call, I got my Bible. I thought maybe I could find some comfort in her and knew that regardless of anything, God knew the truth about everything everyone does and that gossip and lies could not change right. I had always believed that hard times were not given to us to get rid of it, stop, but to help us grow. With that in mind, she was determined to stay in Japan for the whole year and somehow try to stop the rumors ridiculous. Alhamdulillah, I got it. From that year on, I began to understand that all cultures are different and all have good and bad points. I came to understand that it was not a culture that sought, but something else. He attended a high school Buddhist for girls in Japan. We had a weekly meeting in which we prayed, we sang songs and listened to the director's long lectures. At first, I felt comfortable participating in these meetings. I received a copy of the Book of Songs along with beads that we should hold when we prayed. I didn't participate at first, but then I decided I didn't have to give the same meaning that other people gave to things. When he prayed to the same God I had always prayed to, the one God. I can't say that I understand Buddhism. Whenever I tried to find out more, I ended up in an alley without output. I even asked a Japanese man who taught English. He was gone several times to America and said that in Japan it was Buddhist and in America it was Buddhist Christian. There were some things about Buddhism that I found interesting, but not it was something that could be considered a religion. In many ways he took what he liked of religions and spiritual philosophies and formed what I considered to be mine, Jenny's religion. I collected philosophical quotes in high school, read things such as the Celestine Prophecy and Angels, and, when I returned to Australia, still I remained attached to the Christian beliefs that made sense to me. I felt like if he were continually seeking the truth,